Hi everyone and welcome back to Stephan Livera podcast, brought to you by Bolt, where US listeners can buy Bitcoin for the industry's lowest fees and earn the highest Bitcoin back rewards with the Bolt debit card. Now, I had a small error with the recording, so I'm just recording this in post, but my guest for today is Praveen Perera. He is the developer and founder of Cove Wallet, which is a Bitcoin app for you to self-custody your Bitcoin. And I know Praveen through different Bitcoin circles, and I wanted to get him on to explore his views on self-custody and what he's doing and aiming to do with the Cove Wallet. So Praveen, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, so Praveen, I guess just for listeners, obviously you know, but just for listeners, I met Praveen through Bitcoin circles, but from sort of the Sri Lankan Bitcoin community as well. And I know you've got this Cove wallet that you've been working on, which as I understand is for iPhone. So I haven't had the chance to actually use it yet because I'm an Android guy myself, but looking forward to getting into chatting a bit about that. But let's start with, I guess, starting with why. Why did you want to go and create yet another Bitcoin wallet?
Yeah. Before I get into that, it is for iPhone right now, but Android is coming soon. A few months. Just want to put that out there right now. I want to be multi-platform, and hopefully in the future maybe we'll look into desktop as well. But basically the very next thing I'm going to be working on is Android because all the main features I want to do are complete. So I'm just going to bring them all to Android next. Yeah, and for your question of why another mobile wallet, basically, I am an on-chain maxi. I use Lightning. Nothing wrong with Lightning. It's just like the user experience for me is not there. I just end up using custodial solutions usually. But for on-chain, I was a big cold card guy. That's what I use mostly. And before Cove, for anything that I needed to do on mobile, I would use Green Wallet because that was like the nicest looking, easiest to use wallet. I was mostly just focused on-chain. The problem with Green was I couldn't really use it with a hardware wallet, so I had to if I wanted to use
other than Jade, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't have a Jade, so I couldn't use it with like any other hardware wallets, right? So that's basically. And the other thing is I was always helping people with Bitcoin, just getting set up, which I'm sure we all do. And so those two things kind of came together for me. Like, what do I recommend? And like, if I'm going to recommend an app, I would like to have them. If I'm recommending an app to someone, I would like to have a nice path for them. Okay, like start with a hot wallet, but like, eventually where you want it, your end goal, where you want to be, is some sort of hardware wallet. And it'd be nice to stay at the same app through that whole journey. And and then that was basically my motivation.
Gotcha.
And and I first of all I want to say thanks to OpenSats because they funded me. But the reason I'm getting into that is because they fund using Bitcoin, right? So since I've been funded by OpenSats, I've been using on-chain even more. And since it's like a monthly thing, I have to use it all the time. Cove was the natural thing for me to use, and it's been really nice just because even for like a temporary funding that or like temporary Bitcoin that I need to like move over to sell some, to pay for my monthly stuff, I don't have to use a hot wallet. I wanted to make an app that was easy enough to use with a hardware wallet that like for most situations you wouldn't even need to use a hot wallet at all. And for me at least, I've accomplished that because I'm using Cove with Q1 for basically everything, right? So, So that meant.
And out of curiosity, are you doing like QR codes there or NFC, or what's your main mode of use there?
My main mode of use with the Q1 is definitely QR. It's been really nice to use with Q1. Definitely, it works with NFC as well, and I have an MK4 to test with, and I've been testing it. NFC is good once you find exactly where to put it. But QR is just a little bit easier. The other thing is tap signers also. The tap signer NFC is really nice. It works like very quick. So, those are basically I think of Cove as having two main cohorts of users, people that are really new. So I wanted to make it really beginner friendly, try to guide them through it as much as possible, and the other cohorts of advanced users that want to not just a hot wallet, but an actual proper coordinator that you can use with the cold hardware wallets.
Gotcha. And so in the same, let's say, category, because obviously the questions will come, so I'm asking because listeners will want to know. They might think, well, okay, Praveen, what about Nunchuck or Keeper? Because I guess those are, as I understand the market of other options out there, those seem the most similar in the sense that you can just do a hot wallet, single sig on the phone. And of course, you can use Cold Card on those or other hardware wallets and QR codes. Where is Cove different? Is it more like the user experience? Is it kind of your focus or the way you design the product? How do you compare Cove with, let's say, Nunchuck or Keeper?
Yeah. Definitely, that's the question. I get that a lot, especially at the beginning when people are not familiar with the product. It basically compared with Nunchuck and Blue Wallet a lot.
Right.
Blue Wallet. So I'm just gonna compare all of them. Blue Wallet it does work with PSPTs, but the experience is not as nice with the QRs and NFCs. Nunchuck is very nice to use. The only problem is it's multi-sig focused, and it has multi-sig. I know you can use it as a single sig wallet. It's just Cove is very focused, right? So this Cove is no Lightning, no multi-sig, just single sig, which makes my life job as a developer much easier. There's less flows to think about, less things to explain to the user. So if you drop a brand new user into Cove and a brand new user into Nunchuck, they're gonna have less questions with Cove, and that's because that's just the nature of what Nunchuck is. So the Nunchuck has to ask you, hey, do you want multi-sig? Do you want single sig? Cove, there's no questions, right? It's just single sig. That's all you get. So the less questions new users have to answer, the better, right? So so everything I like, I'm pretty happy with Cove right now, but there's definitely more improvements I want to make. And for every new improvement that I want to make for beginner users, it all comes down to how can I reduce the number of questions, or if I have to ask a question, how do I explain it in a really simple way, right? So number one is just the number of questions that has to be asked is much less.
Yeah.
And then and even if you're not a beginner, if you're only going to use single sig, I think it's just a better experience just because there's not a bunch of stuff that you're never going to use.
Yeah. I'm going to make some analogies here. I think in a way I would frame this as you're more opinionated about how to do things. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe because it means maybe you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but there'll be some people who are happy to send either let's say the experienced Bitcoiner who's kind of, how do I coach my noob friends, my new coiner friends, and the new coiners themselves, the noobs, they might like that in a sense because historically different wallets, the setup can ask you all these questions, and then if you're new, you don't know the answer to those. And sometimes it's like, oh, what script type do I want to use? And what this and that? And it's like, experienced users will know, oh, okay, do I want whatever, native SegWit or this kind of output type or whatever. But if you're a noob, it's too confronting all at once. And so that's kind of interesting to see that. So I guess you're kind of taking, as I understand you, it's kind of like how maybe Craig Raw took a certain approach with Sparrow, and then that approach became very popular in the desktop wallet world, right? Because he was kind of putting out something a bit different to the Electrum. It's kind of a competitor to Electrum, but done in a new style and a certain way. And it kind of took off because so many people were really into it and they just liked the way he designed it. And he's sort of the main guy, obviously, behind Sparrow. And I guess in a similar way, then maybe Cove is kind of like that in the mobile sense, that you're taking a more opinionated approach, and it's different to some of the other ideas out there where they have a different idea of how to build that wallet. Now, I guess the question people might have is, are you intending to make this a sustainable business? Is it going to be a business model? Is it going to be just kind of like it's just out there for free? Because the sustainability question will matter, because then people might not be as comfortable, using this thing if they don't know it's going to be around for a while.
Yeah. honestly, that's probably the biggest question up in the air right now. So I've been lucky enough to get funded by OpenSats for the last year, and I just applied again like yesterday. Um, but yeah, sustainable. First of all, the sustainability, the first thing I have to say, it is fully open source, MIT licensed, right? So if for whatever reason I stop working on it, anybody, someone else can take it over, right? And the other thing is we have all these things built in to make import export easier. So it's not just the transactions that you care about. If you're labeling things, that's a big thing. You should really care about, labeling and transactions, separating those things out. So right now we support BIP 329, which is the labeling standard supported by Sparrow and other. That's the standard BIP, right? Yeah, so we support importing labels and exporting labels. You can even do it through QR codes, which is nice. So I guess that's the first answer. Is if I bus factor one, if I go away today, you will not lose anything, right? Like obviously your Bitcoin is safe because it's Bitcoin, but your labels, whatever else, yeah, labels are safe. That's basically the two things you care about. As far as sustainability, I mean, assuming I get funded again, I'll be working on it at least another year or two, right? For sure. But ideally, yes, I'd like to figure out how to make this sustainable, and work on it long term. Maybe I'll have to talk to Craig Raw and ask him how he's able to do it. It's just a hard balance to do. Like I don't want to bring in a bunch of services. Just like the more stuff you add to the actual app, I think the more complex it can get. And yeah, it's just like the guiding ethos of this wallet is to remain simple, right? So I'm gonna have to weigh that. How do I keep it simple, but how do I make it sustainable so I'm not having to rely on, funding forever? But that is an open question. I'm definitely open to ideas. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm thinking about. I mean, my first thought was like maybe I could like try and partner with those people that let you buy Bitcoin. I was doing some research into that. The fees are much higher, obviously, because like if I need to take a cut, and then those people, it's like you're looking at like anywhere from like 3 to 5%, which maybe some people would be willing to pay to buy Bitcoin right in the app. That's probably like the easiest first thing that comes to mind, but yeah, that's definitely a question that doesn't have a good answer yet for me.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the challenges for self-custody wallets in general, right? Because in Bitcoin, it's such a strong ethos around like people don't want to use wallets unless they're open source and all this. But then there's kind of that question of how do they monetize? How do they make it sustainable? Now, one common answer before that was very cypherpunk friendly is kind of the CoinJoin wallet. But obviously, with Wasabi and Samurai, both shutting down, or Samurai being shut down by DOJ, that's kind of another question there. And then, like you said, the other way is kind of having buy Bitcoin in the app kind of functionality. And a common one, I think people, they might partner with like MoonPay or something like this to be able to quickly have support for that around the world. So, yeah, kind of an open question. So we'll see what happens there. I want to get your view on this as well, around being in touch with what the users need. Right now, you were speaking to this before, this idea of how can I take a noob on this wallet and get them to the point where they don't have to ask questions. So how do you stay in touch with that?
Yeah, this is a good question. Mostly I'm trying to remember what it was like with the new people I've guided through. And the other thing that's been helpful is I have a little feedback group. That feedback group has a good mixture of people. So there's like the very technical people, but then I also have some my friends that are self-described technical retards, such as Plate Licking Pleb. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he actually has really good feedback because it's really hard as like someone that's been in it longer. It's really hard to remember everything, right? I remember even when I was learning to program, the people that I learned best from was people that had like just started recently, right? That are like a few steps ahead of you. They are much easier to learn from because like people that are 10 steps ahead, they forgot the stuff they struggled with at the beginning, right? So for an example, I used to have a button that said new wallet, right? Easy, makes sense. You can have multiple wallets, so you add a new wallet. And Plate was like, you know what? I don't want to click this button because I'm afraid it's going to delete the wallet that I already have.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'll change it to add wallet, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is it's not just me on this wallet. I'm doing all the programming, but OpenSats was nice enough to also fund a guy I knew from Canada named Adrian. He's the designer, so I'm a terrible designer. If I designed this, it would look terrible. But I'm very proud and happy at how it looks right now. He's a new Bitcoiner, right? So he's basically getting into Bitcoin as he's doing this, but he's getting paid in Bitcoin, so he's actually using it, right? So he's like brand new, and every design, every UX flow, we work together. Whereas I explain what the point of this is and how it needs to work, and he has good ideas on how to actually lay it out. And I can't think of anyone better because he has no idea what's going on. I have to explain just enough for him to understand, and he's like, then he has all the questions. So like that kind of like focus group or whatever is built in already. And then the rest is just taking feedback. But right now, a lot of the feedback is going to be from the early adopters are going to be people that are basically already in Bitcoin, right? From Bitcoin Twitter of whatnot. But I will be taking more feedback, but it's those two things have helped. Just like having two different groups of people that are like super new or slightly experienced, but not super experienced. And yeah,
of course. And also it matters who you take feedback from. And I mean, the point would also be that there are times where you as the app creator, developer, have to decide whose feedback you're going to take and who you're going to ignore, because you can't listen to everyone. So that's also kind of an interesting thing. So my next question is, if a user is setting up the wallet, can you just walk us through what does the flow look like so people can get an idea if they haven't had a chance to use the app yet?
Yeah, makes sense. So right now, this is an area that I want to improve, especially for new users. But right now, you get dropped into a screen, and there's just two buttons that says, where do you want to store your keys? Hardware wallet or on the phone? The reason I want to improve that is I think for brand new users, that's already like a little bit
That's
too
already
much.
one step too far for some.
Yeah. So basically, I'll explain what it is right now, and then I'll get back to what I want it to be. So if it's a hardware wallet, you click it and it just takes you to a screen that lets you import using a file, QR, or NFC. So for QRs, we right now only support the BBQR standards. So I think so all the cold card stuff works, and Crux, but the other hardware wallets need the UR standard. So that will be the two things I need to work on right now is supporting the UR standard and Android app. But yeah, so hardware wallet flow, you say how you want to bring in the XPub file, basically file, QR or NFC, and yeah, from there you just scan it, and then it puts you into it just puts you right into the wallet screens. So that's I guess a little different from some other stuff. That's a place where we try to avoid questions, so it doesn't ask you, is this a legacy? Is it SegWit, native SegWit? It just puts you right into the native SegWit wallet, and then, but while you're in it, in the background, it'll look through some of the addresses on the other two wallets, assuming this is like a full XPub that has the information for all of them. It'll do a scan, and then if it finds transactions in like legacy addresses or wrap SegWit addresses, it will, at that point, it will ask you, hey, we found transactions in these, do you want to switch, right? That's it. And then so the hot wallet is there's a bit more. So you go, it asks you import or new. You can also scan words from there's like different QR standards for that, like the seed QR and compact seed QR. So you can scan the words or you can enter them if you're importing. And if it's just a new wallet, you can say 24 or 12 words. And then it takes you to a screen where you can verify the words one by one. And it's just like a multi-select thing. Maybe I can send you pictures or something of that, but that's pretty cool. You just, it says, what is your first word? And I think there's like 6 or 7 options, and you select them, you go through all the words, and then you get put into the wallet. You are not forced to verify your words right away. Like you can click away, but there will be a knowing warning banner that doesn't go away until you actually verify it.
The lead sponsor of this show is Bolt, the banking platform designed for Bitcoiners. With the Bolt virtual Visa debit card, you earn Bitcoin back on every purchase. The more Bitcoin you buy with Bolt, the more sats back you get on the card. Buy $2,500 of Bitcoin and earn 3% sats back. Keep stacking with Bolt to earn up to 10% sats back. Bolt offers the industry's lowest fees on Bitcoin buys and sells with zero added spreads. When starting out, you can use Bolt Wallet, which is managed by the team, but Bolt is also supporting self-custody with Bolt Vault, a 2 of 3 collaborative custody multisig for zero monthly fees. With Bolt, you get your own FDIC-insured checking account to store and send fiat, pay bills, direct deposit your paycheck, and replace your legacy fiat bank. Sign up today and get zero fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Go to getbolt.io. This episode is brought to you by CoinKite, the makers of my favorite Bitcoin hardware wallet, the Cold Card Q. Now, some people think self-custody is too hard, but it's really about taking responsibility for your Bitcoin wealth and understanding that self-custody gives you a true feeling of liberty. The Cold Card Q has a full keyboard and big screen. It's got 2 secure elements and a true air gap, allowing you to go fully air-gapped using QR codes from seed generation to transaction signing. You can power the device using 3 AAA batteries, so you don't even have to plug it into the wall for power. You can easily use it with Sparrow Wallet for PC or Nunchuck on mobile, and you can dial it into the right level of security and complexity that you choose. If you want a simple setup, just use 12 words and single signature. If you want passphrases, easy. If you want to add multi-sig or co-signing features, you've got those too. So go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get 10% off on your cold card or other devices and level up your self-custody today. Okay, so that's the main setup aspect of it. And then just one other aspect around the hardware wallet setup. So the idea would be like, let's say that user has, they've got the cold card queue, they've written down the 12 words. Is there guidance for that user on where to kind of go in the cold card menu to actually know which to scan in?
Yes. So in the we have a little like help button that has it's like a pop-up that shows like, hey, if you're on the Q1, if you're on the MK4, and then if you're on other wallets. The problem with that right now is the only hardware wallets I have on me are stuff that either I've bought from what I had or stuff that CoinKite has sent me. So I have the Tap Signer, the Q1, and the MK4. So I have loose instructions on how to do that, but I think I need to reach out to some more hardware wallet people and get them to send me stuff so I can actually like make a video and like, first of all, I need to test it out when I have UR support, but then also I want to add those flows. Yeah, and then even the help right now, it's a little off to the side. I think I would like to make that into more of a flow, so it'll ask you what kind of hardware wallet you have. But I think before I add that, I want to have instructions for more wallets, because right now it's very much just like, do you have a cold card? Here it is. If not, like, good luck. Try to find your way to this file. Yeah, so there's definitely improvements I want to make.
Yeah. And even with that, there can be, let's say there are changes on firmware updates, and then the menus will change. So then that can kind of also be a bit of a pain with how you deal with, like, kind of for all the different things. You got to stay up to date on that. So yeah, that's another. But that's part of the challenge, right? Of making it easy for those end users, especially if they're new and they're not familiar with, like, oh, do I use the generic export here or the Electrum export or some other thing? So that's another thing
I did was for the cold card exports, I support every single format on there. So the idea is that, like, I tell them to go click generic JSON, but whatever. The idea is if they don't know what to click and they just select one, whatever they select will work.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I should just take a moment here, just for listeners who are new. If you are new, how it works is like when you set up, you let's say you get your cold card and you got your 3 AAA batteries. You set it up and you go through that process of writing down the 12 words and so on. In there will be like an export menu. And so what you're doing is you're exporting like a viewing, think of it like a viewing only, a watching only address or watching only export. And so what we're talking about is how you would get that out of this to scan it into your phone wallet, so that way, into your phone app, so that it can sort of watch your what's going on, because the private keys live here, but the public keys are, obviously on the app, so that the app knows whether you've received coins and this kind of thing, or watching your transactions, things like that. And so in terms of like signing and scanning flows, I presume those are kind of all pretty standard. Like it's sort of like send a new transaction, copy paste the address, do the scan back and forth. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So whether you imported a hot wallet or a cold wallet, the send flow at the beginning looks the same. You enter your how much you want to send, where you want to send, and then you have a fee selection. There's 3 options. You can customize the fee selection, and then after that, if it's a hot wallet, the next screen is just like a confirmation screen. It shows you everything and slide to send. If it's a cold wallet, hardware wallet, you'll just have 2 buttons that says export transaction export transaction and import signature. So you would press the export transaction button, and again you get to choose NFC, QR, or file. And then so assuming it's QR, you would scan it with the Q1, let's say. And then once the QR, so you scan it with the Q1, it signs it, and then it shows you a new QR code, and then from your Cove you can just scan that QR code, and then it'll take you to that same confirmation screen, which has all the information, and then slide to send.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. And so, yeah, those are kind of, I guess, the key things that, people would need to know to get started. Kind of zooming out a little bit, there has been some more talk about things like graduated wallet. So this kind of concept of like, different other wallets are kind of, there's other people with this idea of like, okay, start with like eCash, then go up to like, I don't know, Liquid, then go up to Lightning, then go to on-chain, these kinds of things. How are you seeing that? Like, do you see this more like, no, let's just keep it on-chain and just do, hot wallet, phone wallet, and cold card or other hardware wallet? Can you give us your thoughts on, contrasting those ideas, those approaches?
Yeah, I really like the graduated wallet for like Lightning wallets and stuff. It's just not the right decision for this wallet, right? So
yeah,
like I like to describe Cove as being as much as being as what it doesn't do as what it does, right? So never Lightning, never multi-sig. It needs to be really focused, so I can really focus on what it does well, right? So the graduated wallet for Cove, it really is basically what you said, right? You can graduate from a hot wallet to a hardware wallet. And then we do have more advanced features, right? Like, I think I forgot to mention this. Probably should have said it earlier, but we have UTXO management, like coin control. So that was another reason, like, that I like Green wasn't good enough for me at the time when I was using it, because like I wasn't able to do any coin control. But so for the graduated wallet approach for us, we don't show the coin control UTXO management at all in the normal send flow. The reason for that being is like if you're just a user, like there's a big send button, you don't need to know about UTXOs and stuff. But if you are an advanced user that wants to do coin control, there is a way to get it. It's just a completely different flow. So there's like a 3-dot button at the top of the thing, and then it just says manage UTXOs, right? From there, you can search for the different UTXOs, sort, filter, whatever. You select them. And then the next screen, you can choose how much from those UTXOs you want to send, right? So nice, simple, but completely different from the send flow. I don't want to confuse users that don't even know what a UTXO is at that point.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah.
So I think long answer is that I'm definitely keeping the graduated wallet ethos. Like that was what I had from the very beginning, in that like I see the user starting off like here, like at a point that they know nothing, and I want to get them to all the way to basically being an expert, whatever that means, right? And then the whole idea is I want them to get all the way to being an expert, but I don't want them to have to switch out to a different wallet at some point, right?
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're going to do multi-sig, and then yeah.
Right, then it's another whole conversation. And by then, it's kind of, that person is already, let's say, graduated beyond kind of the simple stuff. And, they might have a totally different setup. And they may still use this as like the kind of warm or somewhat cold, but not kind of the deep cold multi-sig aspect of it. So, Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I think there is maybe there are different ethos and visions and worldviews, right? And if I think of, our friend NVK, his view is really seeds are a superpower, and he's kind of more against this sort of quasi vendor lock-in kind of approach, right? Or this kind of he sees it more like some of these efforts to make it really simple, like something like a BitKey as an example. It's sort of, yes, it's more simple for the user, but then what about things like portability of that setup? It's not easy to take it out of that device and put it somewhere else, and you're putting a little more, a little more trust into that manufacturer, the software behind it, some of those elements of it that. And I think some of this is just different worldviews of how people should onboard into Bitcoin self-custody. Because maybe the view of like a BitKey person would be like, look, these people would otherwise be on the exchange and it's better to just get them off. Whereas, let's say, kind of more in the NVK camp, it's more like, no, have your 12 words and, you need to just take responsibility and you need to do a certain amount of learning. But the trade-off for that is, you are handling private key material. You're handling the 12 words or 24 words. But the trade-off of that is now it's more portable and you have a little bit more, you have less, let's say, vendor lock-in. Do you want to give us your view? I obviously, given, the wallet you have and the way you're going, I understand you're obviously more in the cold card camp on this, but can you elaborate or spell out how you see it?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I personally not a fan, definitely not a fan of the marketing BitKey's been doing, kind of like shitting on seeds. Like, I don't think that's necessarily. I understand why they're doing it, but I also understand that people are afraid to deal with seeds themselves, and like, is it the lesser of two evils of going with a BitKey? I'm not sure. But I recognize the issue, so I do want to bring some more of those convenience features that are maybe not 100% cypherpunk. Like Phoenix does a really good job of like cloud backups, where they give you a warning saying like, hey, like if your threat model is like NSA plus Apple colluding, they could probably steal your hot wallet keys, right? So if that's your threat model, just go with a cold wallet. But for most people, I think cloud backup, for example, is like a really really good trade-off there, where even if you get a new phone, Apple syncs those cloud backups between, so you can get that. So something like social recovery, again, I think is like a good trade-off for stuff like that. But yeah, to me, Bitcoin is personal responsibility. So like, you can make it easier, you can make it less scary, but at the end of the day, ultimately, you are going to be personally responsible for this bearer asset, right? Because if it's not losing, like, you still have to protect it. Like, you might have to physically defend your Bitcoin. I mean, there's obviously ways to make that easier, but to me, like, people say Bitcoin fixes this, and like a lot of that is, getting rid of the money printer and all that. But I do think part of it is the ethos of like personal responsibility. Like, I think something changes when you are personally responsible for securing your wealth, right? Something in like you become more of a personally responsible person, or like, so I think all that to say is like, if you can't move into an era of personal responsibility without having to take some personal responsibility. But does that mean everybody in the world is going to self-custody? Maybe not, maybe they'll be in Bitcoin TCs or exchanges. And then like, if they're in exchanges, maybe it's probably better to be in a BitKey, or what's that called? BitKey, right? BitKey anyway. Yeah. I think them as almost completely different markets. People willing to take the personal responsibility and people unwilling to. Maybe it's a graduated approach. The thing is, BitKey is definitely not marketing themselves as a graduated approach. They market themselves as, this is the only wallet you'll need. Screw seeds. Who needs seeds? You got, buy this and keep it forever. Which I understand. Nobody wants to market their product as a in-between product, but I think I'm just like not thinking about that too much, because right now they're almost two completely different market segments, right? They're like, am I going to try and get people that are on exchanges to come to Cove? I don't think so. I think there's just like so many steps between exchange and Cove that like it doesn't make sense. But maybe maybe if they're on a different wallet and they're like, I would custody more of my coin if it was easier, or I'm on a hot wallet because I use my mobile or my phone a lot, but I'd like to move to a hardware wallet because there's no easy way to do it. That's kind of like maybe the people I'm targeting. Or like people that are like, I'm super into personal responsibility. I want to rely only on myself, and I don't want these people to have my information. Right? Like, I don't want to make privacy trade-offs. I don't want to make security trade-offs. Like, I want it all. Like, those are the people I'd like to focus on.
Yeah, and in some cases it is a case of people start on something and then they eventually evolve up, or they graduate up. They might start on something that's really simple and maybe oversimplified per se, and then go further down the rabbit hole, and then they're like, yeah, actually I do want to kind of do the full self-sovereign thing without kind of having to interpose a particular vendor or a particular software service or some provider in there. But yeah, I think it does come down to just different worldviews, right? I think now, obviously, I'm sponsored. I'm sponsored by CoinKite, and obviously, CodeCard is my favorite. I use CodeCard, quite regularly. So obviously, listeners probably have an idea of where I stand on this. But so be it. People will have different worldviews. Maybe the people who are more in the CodeCard camp on this will see it like, look, not everybody is going to self-custody. There'll be a bunch of people who just go use whatever, ETFs and treasury companies and custodians. But the more self-sovereign user will be the ones who are just going to either, jump straight to a cold card, or maybe they come to the cold card after they've kind of played around with other things in the industry, in the ecosystem. And, so be it. It's just different worldviews.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think you nailed it. I think what I really want to do is just really focus on that group of people that are already into self-sovereignty, focus on what they need, what they want, and not so much try to focus too much on the Bitcoin TC group and try to get them over. If you will at least have the ethos of wanting to be self-sovereign, I want to make it as easy as possible and less scary as possible for you. I'm not trying to convince everybody, come here, like it's better. Like you need to at least have that idea of like, this is something I want to do. Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's a group of people, I'm thinking there's a group of people, I really want to be self-sovereign. I really want to self-custody, right? That's something I want to do. It's just scary. That is like my main, like that's who I really want to target, right? The people that really want to, but for whatever reason haven't.
Yeah, totally fair. And I think we'll see. And I think that's the kind of the reality of it as well, because there'll be some Bitcoiners who are happy to so-called play across both worlds, right? They might do some of both, but when it comes to their own personal stack, they want like multi-sig and the kind of the more self-sovereign stuff, like in the DIY way. And then there'll be people somewhere in the middle who want some kind of guided provider, some kind of service who helps you set up your multi-sig. And I think there'll be different approaches, and let's see what people adopt, right? So yeah, as we kind of look around in the space, I guess, what's your view around kind of the Lightning and kind of day-to-day spending? Do you see this as more like well, I guess to be fair, right now fees are quite low, right? So that's kind of, people can still use on-chain. But I guess longer term, maybe it does go that way, where maybe for day-to-day spending, it's more like Lightning and other kind of off-chain things or custodial things, even if I prefer people to use self-custodial. And you're just kind of planting your flag and saying, look, this is, just use if you're doing on-chain, this is the product.
Yeah, exactly. For layer 2 stuff, I'm very much in like a wait and see right now. Like, I don't know where the chips are going to fall, but layer 1, I think it's like I think seeds are it, right? So layer 1, it's more crystallized for me. Like, this is what people that have enough Bitcoin that want to actually custody it that this is where they're going to keep it, right? For layer 2, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Like definitely interested in eCash, Fedi, Arc stuff seems really interesting, especially if you can get the soft fork. But it's very much up in the air. Like I don't know where everything's going to land. Whereas I look at layer 1 and I'm like, that seems like where we're going to be in 5-10 years even. That's what I would think, right? So it made sense for me to focus there.
Yeah, I'm curious then because I'm curious to get your view because I see this like it's likely that some of the more mini-script enabled wallets will become very popular in that time frame, like 5 to 10 years. Now, disclosure, I do not personally use like the mini-script stuff right now, but I could see myself using that in like 5 to 10 years, that maybe it becomes more popular. And there are people who use that for like inheritance planning or, you know, having fancy time locking and things like this. How are you thinking about that from a Cove Wallet perspective?
So personally, from like a Bitcoin user perspective, miniscript, all that stuff is interesting, but it really feels like, you know, we don't need vaults. We got vaults at home kind of situation there. And like as a Bitcoin user, I would love to not need all the miniscript fancy stuff because hopefully we'll get vaults. Like that's my hope, right? Eventually, some people I know very bearish on ever getting vaults, and I understand. But yeah, I think right now a lot of the miniscript wallets and stuff like are basically trying to get around the limitation of not having a vaulting feature in Bitcoin.
Gotcha. So let me just quickly explain this for listeners, just people who are new. So what we're talking about here is if there were to be a functionality like op vault from James OB, although I believe he is now sort of kind of let that one go a bit, and he sees it now like op CCV, check contract verify by Salvatore, is sort of superseding that proposal. And the idea would be that this is enabling more advanced vault at layer 1, at the Bitcoin protocol level, not at an application level. And so the point here would be there are different people in the ecosystem who are in favor of this, you know, ranging from like, you know, CoinKite and people like that, and even the guys at Casa and various other people who generally, you know, might see a use for this kind of thing. And the caveat here is this would require a soft fork, and we don't know if or when a feature upgrade soft fork could happen. And also the other one that a lot of people are talking about now is CTV and CheckSig from Stack, which would enable, let's say, a lesser form of the vaults, but for the more advanced form of the vaults, it might require something with a little more firepower per se. But of course, that's potentially controversial in the Bitcoin community for now, because maybe there's not support for that yet. So just putting an explanation there. But go on, Praveen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so hopefully if we get vaults, you know, that'll be a solved issue. But even if not, like, let's say we don't get vaults, I just don't see people doing inheritance planning and all this like really long-term linking on a mobile wallet, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to, and you shouldn't just have one wallet with passphrases and BIP85, or don't have multiple seed words, but like with passphrases and stuff, you can have multiple wallets for different things, right? You'll have your hot wallet or tap signer for like day to day. You'll have a cold card secured wallet on your mobile for month to month, year, whatever purchases and stuff like that. And then you'll have your super cold storage. This is my retirement, inheritance, all that kind of stuff. And then that might not even be in single sig, right? So Cove's already out for that group.
Gotcha.
Right?
So you see it like that's a different product, or that's a different, you know, need use case per se than what Cove is trying to serve. So you see Cove more like the, let's say, day-to-day on-chain spending and day-to-day hardware wallet use. And you see it like deep cold or kind of really long-term stuff. That's where maybe the multi-sig and inheritance planning, and that's kind of, you're getting into the more advanced stuff there. But I will note, actually, I believe, doesn't Liana Bitcoin, they're one of the miniscript wallets, and they do have a mobile app, right?
Yeah.
But I guess the point is you're saying that that's a different use case.
Yeah. I think most of the stuff I've seen is there has been desktop.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking really from a user perspective. Yeah, I don't see all those wallets as like competitors. Like I like all of them, and I can see myself using it in the future if we don't get vaults, right? I just don't see them as a competitor, because me personally, if I'm doing like a long term. This is my retirement in 50, whatever, 25, 30 years. This is for my kids. I just don't see why I would be doing it on my phone. I would really sit down, carve out 2 hours in my day, sit at my computer, on my desk, get comfy, and really just do it on my desktop. It's not that, like, I'm not saying wallets don't support mobile. I just don't see a user using it for this purpose, doing it on their phone. Like, while you're, doing something else, you're not going to be planning your inheritance, for example. That's my thesis on this, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. And I would say I think that's right, especially for power users and people with, who are going to do that kind of thing. And the kind of person because there are some people who just don't have laptops or desktops, right? They just use mobile. But I guess maybe we'll see what happens in the next 5-10 years. Maybe that space evolves a bit further. So yeah, and so then that's also the question of, like, how do you serve the people who only have a mobile, who don't really use laptop or desktop that much?
Yeah, the thing is, like, I don't know what the intersecting circles of people that don't have a desktop and laptop but have enough money to put into multi-sig, enough Bitcoin to put into multi-sig, inheritance planning. I don't know what that overlap is. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I could definitely be open to being wrong, and I could be more wrong in the future if, like, more people don't have laptops. But right now, that's just...
Yeah. No, I'm with
I
you.
could be wrong, but I'm not a concern.
No, I think you're correct. Because the person who has that kind of net worth would easily be able to just, buy a laptop and use that. But yeah, I guess maybe if it's like a really older person who's maybe not as tech savvy or something. But yeah, I think you're right. There's probably not a lot of people in that category. So yeah, I mean, what else do you have strong views on? Do you have any strong views on treasury companies and ETFs, or do you see that as, like, people are going to do that, but you're just not focused on that?
Yeah, as most for me, TCs, they're interesting in, like, the financial sense. Like, are they responsible for NGU this cycle? It seems like it, right? Yeah, I definitely see it as, like, a completely different segment of the market, right? A lot of people buying, like, MetaPlanet and all these other TCs, I think, are companies that can't buy Bitcoin. Not even there's no Bitcoin ETF in Japan, right? Like, so they basically have to buy MetaPlanet, for example. I see that as, like, basically the TCs being... There's definitely people getting into it that's just trying to, get rich quicker. That's definitely a segment, but I think it's providing a service in that it helps people that wouldn't, or organizations that normally couldn't get any Bitcoin exposure, get some exposure that way. So I'm not, like, super, militant on, like, no BTCs, no ETFs. I understand why people do it, and I'm hoping that, like, I think what I see happening is that, like, maybe this is me being, like, hopeful, but basically the people that get into ETFs because it's easy. I'm hoping, once Bitcoin 10x's, they'll have like a moment of, like, holy shit, like, I have this much, and, like, it's just 10x. I don't really control it, and I'm hoping that'll bring some more people into, like, okay, like, I have this much, I think it's time to do something with it, right? And I know a lot of Bitcoiners that are, like, mostly self-custody stack, but they keep ETF or Bitcoin TCs in their tax advantage accounts, right? So that's going to continue. Yeah, but I'm hoping that, like, more of them will come to self-custody. But I think it's also just a realization that, like, eventually not everybody will be able to custody on layer 1, right? And that doesn't make Bitcoin a failure, but just anyone needs to be able to, but everybody doesn't have to for Bitcoin to be a success, right?
Yeah.
So just really kind of, like, stay in my lane, like, focus on the people that want to self-custody, and that's been my focus.
This episode is brought to you by Galloy, builders of banking software for the Bitcoin age. After years of risk and uncertainty, Bitcoin and banking are colliding. The regulatory environment is rapidly shifting in favor of Bitcoin and digital assets. Fintechs and crypto-native companies can become chartered banks, and traditional banks and credit unions will launch Bitcoin products. But the legacy core banking software that many financial institutions run on wasn't built for Bitcoin. The Galloy banking infrastructure stack delivers all the key elements of a modern core banking platform with cloud-native infrastructure, event-based architecture, and robust APIs coming together to meet the security, scalability, and reliability needs of banks of the future. Whether you are launching a modern financial institution from the ground up, or you are adding Bitcoin-backed lending or payments to your product offering, talk to the team at Galloy. Visit galloy.io or reach out to the team at biz@galoy.io. Yeah, totally fair enough. And it is interesting that obviously many of us who are focused, like we would like more people to self-custody, but despite we're seeing, mempool has pretty much been around one sat for a while, and now the joke is that, maybe not joke, but we're starting to see chatter about going below one sat per VByte. And so that's kind of a topic now as well. And kind of on this, I guess we're getting into also like the filters aspect of it. I know you have a strong view on the whole core and knots thing. So maybe you want to spell out some of your views there for listeners.
Yeah, sure. My main view on the filters debate was that the Bitcoin core devs and just devs in general were being super arrogant and not listening to the users of Bitcoin. Not everybody comes to Bitcoin from a technical perspective. I don't even think I came from it, because when I knew it, like of it technically, I wasn't really interested. It was actually just people explaining the financial,
right, like the sound money part of it. Yeah,
sound money part of it. Yeah, I remember it was I was listening to a Greg Foss podcast with Preston, and I'm like, he was describing basically not what Bitcoin did, but what fiat is going to do. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now, right? Shout out to Greg Foss. Miss that guy. He should get back on Twitter. But yeah, they were just being, I feel like a lot of devs came from a very technical aspect, and they're like they think about it only from a technical aspect and completely forgetting about the human element of these things. And like, it was just very arrogant. I didn't like it. Yeah, that was my main thing. In terms of lowering the fees from one, or like the minimum fee, that's interesting. I don't know yet what to think about that, just because like it's been very new. It's funny though, like the filter people that are like, oh, we need, like, who cares about, we don't need filters, they don't do anything, like whatever, that doesn't change how the market's used. Then why do you want to lower the minimum fee? Like, if it doesn't matter, just go around it, right? But yeah, but I think there's the trade-off there is like, you got, the reason that minimum was there was to prevent like DOS attacks, right? Like denial of service. So we'll see. I'm also very conservative when it comes to changes to Bitcoin, whether it's consensus or filter, or changing
like relay level stuff.
Yeah, just like, it's working. Why do we have to change stuff? Let's just leave it, see what the market does, and go from there, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So I think there's a few things. I mean, the way I see it, and I know, like the Knots guys seem to think I'm like, shitcoining or spamming, or I don't know, apologizing for shitcoins or something. But I just see it like filters. Okay. So this is like another big kind of contention, right? Do they work or do they not work? And I think people sort of get a bit binary and 0 and 1 about it. Whereas I think it's more like they have some effect, but I think it's more like it doesn't deter a seriously economically motivated person. And I think that's kind of the argument, is would the, retardinal people have been deterred? Even if, like, I think it's probably the case that in 2023, at the time that Luke Dasher and kind of the Knots guys were really trying to filter the inscriptions, I don't believe it would have worked at that point. I think it probably would not have, even if Core had merged it at that point. I think the heat was just on, like, it was just, that was the moment for the spammer retardinal people. Like, I don't like them, I don't like the spam, but I just don't believe it would have stopped him. But I do accept that there was like this kind of, that maybe there's some element of like a cultural thing of like, I think that's probably the point that like Luke and Mechanic and those guys would argue that, it's about trying to send a message to them to say, hey, you can't do that here. We're going to fight you every possible way. I just think it probably would not have really meant a lot in the end. I think in the end, the block size and the fees would have done a lot more to sort of deter that activity. But I guess that's where maybe people take a different view of it, right? It's like my view of it is more like these spammers, they kind of ran out of money and the fad kind of died out, and that's what stopped it. Whereas, maybe their view is more like, no, filters were working and that's how it kind of got stopped. I'm not sure if I've fully summarized their view though. So yeah, but anyway, how are you seeing that?
Yeah, I'm not sure on if the filters would have stopped it completely or not, but I don't. Well, that's the other thing. The other side has a lot of bad straw man arguments. Like I don't think anybody on that side was like, oh, filter's going to stop at 100%. It's more like, it'll slow it down, or it'll set the tone. And I think that's valuable in that, yeah, like Bitcoin is money, right? Like we should treat it as such. What would have been the downside of updating the filters? Because like even if you look at it technically, I would argue that the way inscription specifically with the op false up thing, up if off false was used as like it's a bug. It was used in a way it was not meant to be used, right? That's like the definition of an exploit. It was exploiting the code. So why not update the filters to filter that out? What is the downside of doing that?
Yeah,
to me, the upside is maybe you slow it down.
Yeah, so the downside, to answer your question, would be driving mining centralization. I think that's their point. And I think this gets into kind of some of the back and forth arguments because like Luke or Mechanic would say, hey, you're not serious about mining decentralization because, you haven't helped with this other thing around whatever Datum or SV2 and this kind of thing. Whereas like the core people and most of the other developers would be like, they probably see the issue more like you're going to drive extra revenue to the Mara slipstreams of the world rather than making it so that anyone can pick up those transactions and mine them into a block and have a competitive block. And so I think that's probably I'd put it this way. It's almost like filters kind of work, but not really enough to like properly stop it fully, which everyone agrees. But they are also, let's say, working at kind of exacerbating the problems of mining centralization. So that's
I
definitely
don't. I don't agree with that, and I'm struggling for an analogy. But I think it would be like that would be like going and pissing in a pool already full of piss, in that it's already super centralized, right? FPPS makes it centralized. There's I forget, Antpool or whatever, and there's fake other ones are like 70 or like I don't know 60% of the mining, like the hash rate, something huge, right? Or more than that, right? Because it's not just Ant, it's like other people are using their stuff. But yeah, it's already centralized. This is like I don't know, I like how much more centralized could it be than like there's like 4 pools that control everything basically. Yeah, that I just don't think it's a good argument just because it's already so centralized.
No, but what I'm saying, I'm not saying that it's not already centralized.
Yeah.
Like I think most of the, let's say the core people would be like, yeah, we should try to focus on mining decentralization. This is just one vector on which you're making it worse or better. And you're making it worse if you have these filters that are not, that are driving the transactions to, let's say, the Mara slipstreams of the world. So I think that's how they would see it. And
I don't even know if that it made it worse, but like my point is like it's already like you can't make it worse because it's already so bad. Like it's just I don't have a good analogy, but like it's already so bad. Like, well, you're gonna make it like a 0.1% worse. So I think for the culture wise, like you can already see that like not updating the filters has had negative consequences, because not updating the filters has what led us into, like, we let these transactions on, so why don't we increase the op return value, or why don't we get rid of that, right? That to me, that's a direct consequence of not admitting that the subscriptions were an issue, right? So you don't update the filters, which means like, okay, we let all these on. So, and then the next logical thing was the op return. So it's like, so people always say slippery slope is a fallacy, but I think if we looked at all the LGBTQ stuff and all the stuff that has happened over the last 10 years, I think you might agree that the slippery slope fallacy is not a fallacy. So to me, not updating filters was the slippery slope, and it's I don't like where it's leading us as a definitely as like a dev community of like, okay, like, you know, all this stuff is okay. If it's a valid transaction, it's a valid transaction. Those are the things I hear, right? So
yeah, I see. So, I mean, I would agree with you on the kind of the broader political aspect of like, yeah, like what happened with all the woke stuff. I mean, we're probably similarly aligned on that point, but I just don't see them as the same thing. You know, I just see this more like there are developers they see it as their role is to just, you know, I think they see it as like they are just kind of they're kind of helping maintain the highway, and they can't control that a lot of people choose to use that highway. And I think this is kind of the dirty reality of it is that they let me just finish this point though. I think most of those, let's say, graybeards from the kind of Bitcoin core developer and technical community, I think most of them just see this like they kind of already sort of gave up on this idea that you would be able to stop this spam stuff, even if they don't like it. I think they just see it like there's no principled way to stop it, and that's probably so you might as well at least not make money centralization worse. That's probably how I'm understanding it anyway.
And yeah, I disagree because I think they talk out of both sides of their mouth on that because they're like, okay, we're just maintainers. We're not making, you know, we're not making decisions like big ones. But then why go and remove options from your node runners, right? Okay, if you're just like if you're very conservative, not making any changes, okay, then don't fuck with the op return. Leave it alone.
So in terms of the config thing, there were different views on that, right? There were some people saying, yeah, keep in the option, and others of them who were saying their argument would be something like it would be like the user having an option to shoot themselves in the foot, right? And hey, we're libertarians, let people have, you know, their choice, and so be it. And I think there were others who were in that camp of saying, yeah, like, you know, let them do that. And I think it gets into like other arguments of like, oh, is there more technical debt required to maintain this thing, and you know, for an option that they view as it's worse for the network. And this also gets into kind of, it's like a really deep thing of then you start getting to like, hey, should there be different implementations? Should we have, okay, NOTs and BTCD and Libitcoin and whatever else out there? So I think
I'm actually a big fan of having multiple implementations. I think something that's been really good that came out of this is that like people realizing right now Bitcoin Core is Bitcoin. And I don't think that should be the case. Like, I think Bitcoin, the protocol, shouldn't have one client, right? Because that's centralizing. It's like, in the beginning, it made sense because, like, you know, there's changes happening more often. It was easier to make changes and not have a chain split when there was only one implementation. But, like, ideally, I think a lot of people agree with me, even the people that don't agree with me on the filter stuff, that, like, in an ideal world, we have a plurality of, like, we have multiple implementations, none of them having over 50% of the like, yeah, you know, of the market share, basically. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree. I think even that's more like some of the developers I've spoken to, or I've heard their view is kind of like, that's a pipe dream. But to be fair, there are some developers who think, no, actually, it should be done, and it should be an effort made to have multiple implementations. But there are just other, let's say, graybeards who see that as like, that's also in the too hard / impossible camp or bucket, let's say. So that's my understanding of kind of from talking to different developers, try to understand some of the different views in the community, at least in the, let's say, the technical community. Why are they thinking this? And so, yeah, but I'm curious, where do you think it's going to go from here? Do you think it's going to be like, there'll be a lot more people who use NOT or use some other implementation, or do you see it as like, well, how are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, NOT's adoption is still going up, right? And people like to pretend that it's fake and cyber attacks, but I think it's real. There's no reason to think it's not. And yeah, I think that'll continue, and I'm hoping that this opens the gateway to people realizing that, like, you can be on Bitcoin, use Bitcoin without using Bitcoin Core. So right now it's not. Maybe something else will come out. that makes different choices on the non-consensus code. And I mean, it's already like, I don't understand the too hard thing. Like it's already like dropped so much, right? What is it, like 10% now?
No. So I think what they're getting at there is, well, remember, knots is a lot of the code, like 97% or some, very high number is Bitcoin core code. Yeah. It's just that Luke is, and maybe a few other contributors have really tried to maintain a few other options, and some people like that, and fair enough, But I think the problem or the point, the people who say it would be too hard or / impossible are people saying like having another total re-implementation be fully, compatible can be hard, right? So you've seen.
I don't care about a full re-implementation though. That's the thing. Like I'm not, when I say multiple clients, I don't mean from the technical perspective of someone needs to rebuild this from the ground up. It can be. I think that's why I like the idea of libbitcoin. I know some people, or libbitcoin kernel, I forget what it's called, but the idea being that you extract the consensus code out.
Engine out, yeah.
Yeah. I've heard some people not being a fan of it now for whatever reason. Maybe there's something else. I don't know. But I like the idea. I think the idea makes sense, right? You keep the consensus code the same, and then let users choose whatever relay policies and whatever other things that are not consensus. It doesn't need to be a full rebuild, because like that's a technical detail. Who cares, right? That's not what matters. It matters what is the user downloading, what is the user running, how do they see that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it would be nice. It would be good to see different implementations. But I think it just depends. What do people think is possible in terms of the re-implementation stuff? Or I mean, to your point, more like just having the options and things like that. So I think there's kind of different arguments in and out there. But I mean, hey, let people run whatever they want, and we'll see what happens. I think the spam stuff, like I said, I don't like it. But are we just going to see these kind of periodic waves of spam? Maybe. But I don't see it as like some... whereas like, let's say some of the filter guys, and I'm not saying you are necessarily in that camp, but some of the filter guys, I think their rhetoric is a bit overdone. Like, I think they're kind of saying it's like, oh, this is like the end of Bitcoin, and oh no, you let this through and all of a sudden, it's Ethereum. I don't think so. I think it's just like, there's a few spammers who are idiots and want to spam the chain with garbage, and it's just not that much. And we already the community in 2017, let's say, as a result of the SegWit, soft fork, we already chose these particular limits, right? This theoretical 4 megabyte or 4 million weight units, whatever. That's the limit we chose. And these limits are already quite conservative. So I'm not that worried. Personally, I don't think spam is the end of Bitcoin. I think it's more like a nuisance. Like, I don't like it. It's a nuisance, but I don't see it as like stopping us in this broader, let's say, mission of, sound money and Bitcoin and all that. So I see it as kind of like, it's just an annoyance. I'm not that worried personally.
Yeah.
I do agree about the mining centralization though. Like, I think it would be nice to have better, Datum and SV2 and ideally going away from FPPS. So I agree on that part. And that's why I support Ocean. Like, I like what Ocean are doing. I just don't necessarily agree on the NOT side of it and the relay filtering. That's my specific disagreement.
Yeah, I'm not super paranoid or bearish on basically spam taking down Bitcoin, but I'm glad they're there. Those people are there. I think that part of the reason of Bitcoin's resilience is because of the super tinfoil hat, people that get super involved in that kind of stuff. As a analogy, have you heard of the bubblegum like counting experiment?
No.
So basically you have you have a jar full of bubblegum balls or whatever, and then you ask the class, like, guess how many is in here, right? No one person's gonna guess, but right.
The average if you of the guesses will be pretty
like
good.
Very close. Which means that if you didn't have the absolutely retarded guesses on either side, right, you might not get to the right answer. So I think it takes all kinds of like. I think that's how I think about it, right? It takes. I might not be super paranoid, but I'm super glad that the super paranoid people are there. Because if it's not this, they'll get paranoid about something else and like make a lot of noise, and that will matter, right?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely. Gotcha. I like those people. I'm glad they're there. I'm not there. I don't think it's gonna take down Bitcoin, but it's definitely an annoyance. I don't like it. But I'm glad that people are pushing back on it, because like, let's say we didn't have the paranoid people that thought it was going to take Bitcoin out. If they didn't push back, what would that look like? I don't know, right? I don't know. Does Bitcoin Core go in a different direction because they have no pushback? Does that lead to somewhere else? I don't know, right? So yeah. I'm happy they're there.
Yeah, and I think there is a role of maybe social pressure, and to be honest, I think the social pressure element, like if people were to go pressure, I don't know, the mining pools or the mining people, maybe that would be a different outcome. I don't know. For me, it's more just like I just don't think the relay filters are going to work, and I think if they were to apply social pressure, that actually has a better chance of working than relay filtering. Whereas I think in the mind of, like, when I talk to Mechanic and other people, it seems like they kind of conflate those things and say, no, well, we're letting the miners know that we don't like this. And to me, it doesn't really follow for me. Like, I think if you want to go tell the miners you don't like something, well, hey, pick up the phone and call them or talk to them and tell them, hey, we don't like this spam that you're doing or whatever. And at that point, the miners might say, okay, yeah, maybe I agree with you, or no, screw you, I don't care. I just have a different worldview to you. I think that's probably where it's likely to shake out. And I think the likely shaking out is they'll just do what is what they think, and we'll just have to operate the way we think is best.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's fair. I don't know if the big mining pools cares about like what we think at all. So.
Yeah, but maybe it would matter at like a social level, like if it was seen like, I don't know, like Chainalysis or something like that, right? Like if it was seen like, oh, you're a loser if you go work for Chainalysis.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like, if it was a similar thing, then I don't know, maybe, but who knows? Like, because don't forget, like a lot of the spam people, they don't really care. They might not care what you and I think. They might not care. So I don't know. Like that's why for me, I just see it as like, to me, this is like a nuisance thing. It's not like high priority. I'm more interested in like, what is there that we can do to grow Bitcoin adoption in terms of monetary use, right? Obviously, I don't like the spammer uses, but so be it.
Yeah, no, I mostly agree with you on there. It's like it's a nuisance. What I didn't like is like the dishonest argument,
kind of the arrogance or the dishonest arguments. Yeah,
which
is fair.
People would be like, "Oh, filters don't matter at all." Okay, then why change this, right? Like, it makes sense. Like, at least be honest about it. Yeah, I guess my other is the only thing is that kind of like social like dishonest arguments, and where does this go next? Like, if unchecked, where does it go? That's I don't know the answer, but right now, whatever. I feel like it's past. Like we don't need to rehash too much, but very bullish on Bitcoin in general. I'm happy. It's good.
Well, do you have any other controversial takes or any strong opinions on anything else in Bitcoin? Or have we kind of gone through most of them?
Yeah, no, honestly, right now, not really. I feel like I was more engaged in Twitter and controversy and stuff before Cove. But now it's like really
your heads down building. That's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Builders build and larpers laugh.
Yeah, I lift my head up and yell at a few people every now and then when something comes up, but then I go right back down.
Gotcha. Okay, so look, I think you touched on this before, but you said your main priorities now are Android support and this QR version, standard, I guess. Any other closing thoughts on Cove, and where can people find you and find Cove?
Yeah, so I have Twitter. It's just Praveen Perera, and then the Cove Wallet. It's just Cove Wallet. Cove website is covebitcoinwallet.com, so you can find Cove and all that stuff there. It's on the App Store right now. Hopefully, it'll be on the Google Play Store in a few months. So those are my definitely short-term goals. The other one would be I want to add an onboarding flow for new users, so that guides them a little bit more than what we have. And then I have a whole list of features that I want to add. Maybe I'll put it on Twitter or something. My plan just to get feedback on what people think I should prioritize. I definitely want to add a lot of privacy stuff. I don't know if you want to go into that, but basically, right now, it defaults to a public node, but you can right now connect to your own node, but it's a mobile wallet. So I need to make it easier to connect to your own node when you're not at home, right? So that means adding Tor support, maybe some other way of making a direct tunnel with your home and your mobile phone. I want to add Kyoto integration. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's a compact block filters. So those nodes are, more privacy preserving. And then PayJoin is really interesting. I'd like to. I know the shitcoin wallet, Cake Wallet, that adds that. So it's disappointing that we as Bitcoiners let a bunch of shitcoiners beat us to these privacy features. So I'd love to add PayJoin. Yeah, and then other than that, it's just like a little features here and there. Some more hardware wallet support. I want to add RBF. So I just wanted to, really round out the wallet, make it really complete, add more privacy stuff, and just try to make it easier for users. And then I'm also thinking of desktop builds, but I think that'll really come later, and I would like to get some feedback from the community to see if that's something they want. I was talking to Odell, and he said he liked the idea of a desktop build for the simple fact of if he's recommending a wallet, he doesn't have to add all these caveats of like, okay, if you're on mobile, use this. If you're on desktop, if Cove can be a really good wallet or the best wallet for new people to go to on any platform, then he could just say, go get Cove. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, listeners, check it out. Links will be in the show notes. CoveBitcoinWallet.com. Praveen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.